is a class of people who take LSD with such an approach that they want to experience different realms of their own consciousness. Pretty similar to the way that shaman will use a drug.
Yeah.
Because these people are referred to as psychonauts in general. The general term for it is psychonauts. And people who are interested in exploring into all the gymnastics that is possible through altered states of consciousness, which will not transform your life, but it will give you a certain glimpse into different states of perception. You can do it entirely without the drug because, as you know, this brain is like a pharmacy in itself. All the drug experiences that people have through cannabis or LSD or some other drug can be produced here without any external stimulus. We have cannabinoid receptors in the brain, as you know. So there is a class
So you can activate that in meditation?
I probably did not tell you about. I've spoken to him about it before. I probably didn't tell you about my experience. This was part of the process that I was going through when I was trying to overcome fear of death. And what happened was, this was something I was struggling with for several days. Really, those days were like a nightmare in my experience. You know that feeling when you're like a caged animal and there's a great sense of impending doom, and no matter what you do or do not do, you cannot escape that impending doom. So you're overwhelmed with anxiety and panic. And that was my condition of mind for several days at that time. Very unpleasant experience. Then what happened one time during that phase is I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and I was just stoned, as if I had taken a blunt, not a joint, you know, the blunt, which is the marijuana and the cigars. As if I had taken a whole blunt. And I got up, went to the bathroom, my eyes were bloodshot red. I had very poor sense of orientation. But it was even more stronger than the common trip on marijuana. Because here it was almost as if I was stripped away of the sharpness of my intellect. It became very poor. So what I did was I just started walking in circles in the room, just to do something physical to try and help me to engage my intellect and bring me back to my normal senses again. But the experience was pretty much equivalent, but I would say even stronger than the kind of trip that you would have on marijuana. And in exactly the same way, I had the munchies after.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I had a very strong munchies.
Try now.
It was really a food festival after that. But that shows you something, that these cannabinoid receptors are just sitting there in the brain, and whether they're activated or deactivated, that is a different story, but those receptors are there. And this was a great mystery at a certain point in medical science. Why do human beings have this cannabis receptor? And from many different fields, they inquired into this question. So people who study the history of humanity, the anthropologists, thought maybe there was a point of time in humanity where people were just all the time smoking up and getting high on pot. But this obviously cannot be true, because marijuana is not native to many countries. But if you were to take any brain in the world at random and analyze the substances in his brain, you'll see that all of them have this cannabis receptors. So that cannot be true. And this aside, there are sea creatures who live in the ocean who do have these cannabis receptors. So why do they have them? It obviously can't be because the fish are sitting down in the depths of the ocean and smoking marijuana. The only logical conclusion, therefore, is when the human brain enters into a certain space of perception, it produces the corresponding chemistry for that kind of experience. And that is retained as a memory through evolution, and we've inherited it. That's with cannabinoid receptors, but you have a whole pharmacy here. If it's a matter of just hunting for experience, which I think is a very immature pursuit, because, like I said, you can have such skill and gymnastics in exploring many different levels of consciousness, but with very little wisdom. So there's a good reason why in the teaching of Gautama Buddha, his teaching can be divided into three different aspects. One is sila, and sila is pretty much similar to the yamas and niyamas of yoga. It's all about certain moral and ethical observances which you are to adopt throughout the course of your discipline. Then the next part of his teaching is samadhi. You've heard the word samadhi before, right? Just keep in mind, because this can create a lot of confusion. When the Buddhists use the word samadhi, it's in a different sense than what is meant in other non-Buddhist traditions, which is the merging of the observer and the observed as one indivisible reality. Samadhi here means something different. Among the Buddhists, it means concentration. So that's samadhi. And through developing the power of concentration, you can have this quietness and calmness of the mind, which can then be used as a tool to access many different stages of consciousness. And then there's the final part of his teaching, which is prajna. And prajna means something like intuitive wisdom. Just for you to enter into many different states of consciousness, that is not going to offer a solution to the problems of human suffering. So this is why part of the teaching of Gautama Buddha was that these two things have to be in equilibrium with each other. Samadhi has to be balanced with prajna, with intuitive wisdom. And this intuitive wisdom happens on multiple different levels. One is intuitive wisdom as to, for example, the nature of the fact that everything in your life is impermanent. See, if it was instinctive for you to know that, wouldn't it be that non-attachment would become a natural expression of your life? If it was as instinctive as your breath or the bloodstream that's moving through your body, your intelligence simply resists to become attached. That's what I mean by it's a very intimate kind of knowledge. So intimate in such a way that you cannot even say that there's me and then there's the teaching. You and the teaching have become one. You are the teaching. You are yoga. I don't think that when it comes to transmitting yoga, anybody can ever teach yoga. You have to be yoga. And just through your very being, your very presence in itself is a teaching in itself. That is where the real yoga lies. It's all in the non-verbal details. Because after all, everything which is existential, which has roots in reality, has to do with being. Right? Not with thought, not with emotion, with being. So there's more truthfulness on a single blade of grass or a single lonely leaf on a tree than all the world's theories, religions, and explanations combined together.